All right, 5 minutes after 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this Monday morning. Robin, I was watching this thing on the internet from the National Geographic people, and it was talking about the fact that all creatures have the will to live.
Oh, I believe that.
And this is why a rabbit that gets his foot caught into a trap will chew off its foot just so it can live. Living is ultimately the big will that every living creature has, right? And Lisa Varner is going to talk about a living will.
A little bit different.
That's a crazy introduction.
Yeah.
Lisa Varner has been with us before. One of the sweetest ladies in our community, I guess you could say. One of the most beautiful smiles in our community. Look at that smile right
thank
there.
you.
You are the Community Outreach Coordinator for Hospice of Marion County, another beautiful organization, and you're here to talk about living wills today.
Yes.
Not the will to live, but the living wills.
Yes.
Well, the will, let's see, the will to pass on something so that people who are living will have something when you're gone.
Well, that's
What is a living will anyway?
Well, a living will. A lot of people confuse a living will with an actual will that has to do with your material possessions. A living will, though, has to do with the type of health care you would want should you be unable to communicate your wishes.
Oh.
Okay? So this is a gift that you give to
This
your
is a
loved
tough
ones.
one. You know why? I just brought this up this morning.
Did you?
You can tell. Yes, you can tell I have a cold, right? Mm-hmm. So all weekend long, I've been coughing, and I was thinking of my father because at the end of his life, he had a trach, a hole in his neck, and they literally had a hose going down there, and we literally would pump out phlegm for the last 6 months of his life or so. What a horrible last 6 months. I mean, I just thought, boy, my poor father, and I can remember the moment the doctor came in to the waiting room and said, one option is to put a trach and explain what it would be. Do you want that or not? And we said, of course, it's going to save his life. Okay. He really didn't have much of a life after that. And so that would have been a tough moment. So what you're saying is if he had a living will that said, look, I don't want that kind of procedure, then we would have had no choice, or the doctor wouldn't have even asked us?
No, they would have asked you.
They still would have asked?
Yes. And I think the most important part about completing your living will is that it makes you think about those types of situations. Death is a topic that most people don't want to think about. But it's 100% certain that, none of us are getting out of here alive.
That's crazy, isn't it?
It is. And I didn't have to pay any fancy researchers to, make that determination. But this is truly, it's a gift that you give to your loved ones. The fact that you have thought about what you want.
Right.
And you talk to them before a healthcare crisis. So your father was already in a state of crisis.
Right.
And you hadn't had that conversation.
Right.
Had you had a conversation where he said, if there ever comes a point where you have to take extreme measures to keep me alive, I don't want those types of things.
So a living will is only about that, or is it about anything else?
Well, why don't I
go through it a little bit?
Why don't I go through it a little bit? The living will actually has two parts. It has your living will declaration, which is the type of medical treatment you do or do not want, and it has a healthcare surrogate designation. So the living will declaration says, I do or I do not want to have a tube taken out of my nose or mouth connected to a machine that's breathing for me.
You do, taken out?
Yes, because what happens many times is you have a medical crisis, 911 is called, you're transported to the hospital. Right. They would start life support en route to the hospital. So you get there.
Right.
A paramedic doesn't know that you have a living will. The family comes to the hospital and their loved one is already on a breathing machine. So this is... That's the type of situation that would be covered there.
So is the do not resuscitate order, is that part of a living will?
No, that is a separate thing.
That's something separate.
That's a separate form, and that actually has to be signed by a doctor. You have to get that from your doctor, and your physician has to sign that.
And who is obligated to honor that? Everybody?
The do not resuscitate order?
Yeah.
Well, it has to be presented. Let
me tell you why I asked this, and
Okay.
I hope I'm not doing this to get anybody in trouble. I'm just curious. I won't say who, that way I won't get anybody in trouble. But I worked for a while for an assisted living facility.
Sure.
And there were do not resuscitate orders in some of the rooms. And we were told, all the staff was told, just go ahead and do whatever you need to do to keep that person alive until paramedics get here.
Sure.
Let them decide whether to use the thing. Okay, so that seems like it's the way it should be, right? Like I shouldn't be the one who I did activities.
Right.
I wasn't a medical person.
In here, I think each facility is different. It's been within the last year that there was a very well-publicized case in California where somebody on the campus of an independent living facility, they had encountered somebody who had a heart attack, and they called 911, and the dispatcher was telling them to do CPR, and the lady said, no, our policy says we're not supposed to do CPR. And the person died, and now the family was upset that the person that the employee of the facility hadn't done CPR. But each facility gets to establish their own policies in accordance with their state's laws.
Wow.
So it's really, it's up to the family to ask a lot of questions whenever they're selecting a facility for their loved one to live in.
Okay.
If they have a do not resuscitate order their loved one, paramedics would observe that.
So who do you file the living will with? Is it an attorney or?
No, a living will doesn't have to be notarized. It's a legally binding document, but it doesn't have to be notarized, and an attorney doesn't have to do it. It's a free form that Hospice in Marion County offers to anybody, and it's simply you check the check boxes. We talked about the first thing was you do or don't want to have a tube taken out. I do or don't want to have a tube that's feeding me removed if it's already been started.
Yeah. I want that moved. I don't want, you know what? After witnessing what I saw, I don't want anything.
Right. And yes. So that's good.
Is it?
Have you, well, that you know what you want.
Okay.
And because you've had a personal experience, and you've seen some people suffer what you think was unnecessary, then you feel pretty strongly about what you want. I do or don't want CPR. A lot of people think that you do CPR on somebody and they bounce back and, they get up and they go home, and it's, a wonderful thing. And TV has glamorized what CPR is like in a healthcare situation, like in the emergency room. The statistics on long-term survival for somebody who has CPR in the hospital it's less than 10% survival. It's very low. They might be resuscitated, but the chance of them living and recovering and
it depends on why they need it, though, right? I mean, if it's like a drowning, usually that's a good.
Sure, but that's normally a healthy person.
Okay, right. Okay,
let's think about somebody who has multiple chronic illnesses and who's 80 years old.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. The outcome isn't necessarily what you would perceive.
And CPR doesn't include the mouth anymore, does it? CPR is just chest compressions now, right?
I don't know.
No, okay.
I'm not CPR certified.
All right, but that's one of the questions.
Yes, CPR. Okay, again, this is I do or don't want a tube placed in my mouth or nose to breathe for me. So this is, would you want that initiated if you were in the hospital? And then the one about the feeding tube, would you want that started? And then...
So then who gets the form? If you do it yourself?
You do it yourself, and you have...
Then you do what?
It's up to you to give a copy to your doctor.
Okay.
Next time you go in for a well check.
Oh, okay.
Take a copy to your doctor. Did you get him? He had a do not resuscitate order.
He did have a do not. I didn't want to breathe him in. There was a little fly on my
There's a
microphone.
little gnat flying around.
Okay, so you give a copy to your doctor.
Right.
Do you remember the discussion several years ago about the death panels?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Sarah Palin was part of that, right?
Mm-hmm. So your doctor is never going to sit down with you and say, it's important for you to complete this living will. Because he's not going to get paid to do that. And he doesn't have time to do that. He doesn't.
Okay. Right.
So you have to do it on your own. And then you give a copy to your kids and your spouse. Your kids don't want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. Adult children don't want to hear their parents talk about this because they don't want to think that their parents are going to die.
Right.
I think I'm more open to the conversation because of what I've witnessed at hospice and what I've heard about the things that have happened to families. Because what happens is the family can't agree on what their loved one would want. So then they wind up staying on life support. And it can literally tear families apart, because people can't agree whether or not mom should be on a breathing machine.
Right.
And they're in a crisis situation and they're trying to figure out what's the best thing to do because mom never had a conversation with them about what she wanted.
So does hospice have them just for the asking? We just go in and say?
Yes, absolutely. These are free. The other thing we have is a 5 wishes. Okay. This is a little more detailed. But what it is it's your, I didn't finish the living will. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Let me get back to the living will before I move on. So the other parts of this are you would or would not want to have a needle or catheter to give you water and other fluids, okay, to keep you hydrated.
Okay.
And then I want to be kept as comfortable and free of pain and suffering as possible, even if such care prolongs my dying or shortens my life. You want to be comfortable. You want whatever medication that they can give you to relieve your pain, your shortness of breath, your anxiety, your nausea, those types of things. The other piece to this I mentioned was the healthcare surrogate. That's who's going to make your decisions for you. If you're married, it might be your spouse.
Yeah, right.
Or it might be one of your adult children. One of our medical directors, she said that her husband wasn't going to be her surrogate because he wants something totally different than she wants. He said, I would want to be put on a breathing machine for at least 6 months. And she said, well, then you're not making decisions for me because I don't ever want to be put on a breathing machine. And she's afraid that he wouldn't honor her wishes. So she said, well, then I'm going to have someone else do it.
So you do a living will, but there's no obligation to abide by it. That's just a here's some information, but nobody's legally bound by it.
That's correct.
Right?
Okay. I don't think anybody's going to get sued over it.
And so if her husband had not honored, if she had named him, even though she put it in writing and he did something opposing what she wanted, so that's just the way it is. Nobody's going to say anything to him, right?
Well, he would have his conscience to live with. I don't think that...
Yeah. Oh, that's tough.
There would ever be any kind of civil action because of that.
How about a child? Because sometimes children get in accidents, and then you've got the parent that's taking care of the child before the accident. Do some parents make out a living will for their child in case something happens?
I know there are some forms for children to be able to have these types of conversations. As a parent, I can't imagine ever giving up on my child.
Yeah.
So and that's not something that Hospice of Marion County has been very involved with. We do have some children who we provide services to who have very serious life-limiting illnesses. That's a special program that we have. And honestly, I'm not sure if they do anything like this for those patients or not.
Okay.
That's a great
But I'm guessing 99%, that is just to pick a number, trying to express the most people who use that are going to give information that will be abided by. That people will say, okay, this is what dad wants. This is...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'll give you some interesting statistics. 76% of Americans say they want to die at home, but 50% of Americans die in a hospital.
Oh, okay.
And I think a lot of that is because...
Maybe they didn't have time to get them home.
We're not having those conversations. you know, because it really is about personal choice and what types of, how you want to live out your life, really. So we talked about the living will. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the 5 wishes.
5 wishes, yes.
Five
I
wishes.
recognize that, by the way.
Yes. Well, this is a much more thorough living will. It has the same type
I went
of,
over that with my mom. If it's the same thing, it looks just like it.
It is. And this is what types of care decisions you want and who's going to make your decisions for you. Those are wishes 1 and 2. But the types of care decisions, this gives you a little bit more flexibility, where the living will was just I do or do not want things.
Yeah.
This says if my doctor and another healthcare professional both decide I'm likely to die within a short period of time and life support would only delay the moment of death, I want life support. I don't want life support. I want life support if my doctor thinks it can help. So this gives you a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but we also, you know, the 5 wishes we have for free for people, just like we do the living wills.
Right,
It's, you know, really whatever you want to do with that. Wish 3 is how comfortable I want to be. I want to have music played. I want to be massaged. I want a cool, moist cloth on my head if I have a fever. I want my lips and mouth kept moist. Those types of things. How I want people to treat me. Oh, that one, wish 3 also covers the pain situation.
How I want people to treat me.
How I want people to treat me. I wish to have somebody with me whenever possible. I want to have my hand held. I want people to talk to me. I want people to pray for me. I want members of my faith community with me. I want to have pictures of my loved ones by my bed.
Oh, man, Lisa.
I want to be kept clean.
Yeah.
A lot of times you lose some bodily function, control, so you want to be kept very clean.
You think that'd be common sense on the caregiver's part, but
Sure.
evidently it's not.
Well, and it's hard.
Can you imagine reading that, though? Oh, it didn't put it on here. Well, what kind of cleanup? It's not on here.
Well, I can tell you that with hospice, I mean, this is the standard, you know, this is the norm and how we take care of people with the compassion and the dignity that we provide.
And you do.
And wish 5 is what I want my loved ones to know. So this is, you know, I want my loved ones to forgive me if I've hurt them in any way. I want them to know that I forgive them of anything. And then it even goes on to talk about funeral arrangements. Do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be buried? If you've made any pre-arrangements, where those are, those types of things. My mom and my dad have both done these, and my mom has even gone so far as to start writing in what hymns or songs she wants sung, what scripture she wants read, things like that.
And that makes it easier.
Yes. And see, my
the
mom has
person
had
has
to
passed.
plan a few funerals for loved ones and didn't have any guideline. So she doesn't want me or my brother to be in that situation.
Do you know what? My father came. I was at my parents' house, and I was in the driveway getting ready to leave. And my father came out and said, "Can I talk to you for a second about something?" And I said, "Sure." I have no idea what he was going to say. He said, "When I die," because he knew that I play guitar and I sing. He said, "Would you sing the Lord's Prayer at my funeral?" I said, "Yeah, sure." You'll not say that because I'm denying you're never going to die. You know, so I always knew that that's what he wanted.
Aww.
And that was quite a few years before he died. But then when he was sick and it looked like he might not live, I didn't even know the song, the Lord's Prayer. I knew the Lord's Prayer, but I didn't know the song. Believe it or not, everybody said, "Come on, how could you not know it?" But I really didn't. So I learned it, right? Well, at his funeral, Lisa, I had messed up on a B minor. I know it sounds silly. It was so emotional too. I mean, it's man. I mean, this is that moment, and there's the church filled with people, and I'm singing the song. It just seems so unimportant as a performer. This is not a performance. This is fulfilling a wish, you know. And my son, which would be my father's grandson, was working the little controls to make sure that the guitar was balanced with the voice. And I got through the song okay, except for the B minor where I messed up. I looked up at my son. He was crying. He was crying so hard.
Yeah.
And then that was me. That's what got me all of a sudden. You know, it's like, it's weird, isn't it? I mean, I'm just telling you because we're friends. You just reminded me of something that was pretty important to my dad, obviously, to ask for that. So.
Oh, and you got to honor his wish.
Yeah, but I messed up on the B minor. I always thought when I die and I can speak to him again, I'm going to say, did you notice or did it go unnoticed? But he's funny, absolutely true story. I know this is aside from what we're talking about, but we had a psychic on the air. Her name was Linnea. And Linnea said she could see my father. And I said, well, ask him, did he mind that I hit the B minor? I hit it. And she didn't even answer me.
Yeah.
I listened to the tape later on. I said, what did she say? And it's like she just didn't. I don't know. It's crazy. But anyway, so living will.
Living wills, yes.
So we could just go get a living will from you?
You can. You could call hospice to get one. You could stop by hospice and get one. Just call the main number to ask for one if you want.
What is the main number?
873-7400. We also have the living will available on our website as a download. So
really?
You could just go to hospiceofmarion.com.
Wow.
And
so I'm guessing that you could actually change it a little bit if you wanted to, right? Add another question or maybe something.
You could write something in, absolutely. Yeah. And I did mention it doesn't have to be notarized. They just have to be witnessed by two people, and neither of the witnesses can be the healthcare surrogate because that would be a conflict of interest. But you can always amend it. It's revocable at any time. You could shred it and do a new one.
Lisa, I think we have some phone calls coming in. I've been trying to answer the phone, but it keeps blanking out. Oh, it blanked out again. Okay. I think somebody may be getting a wrong number, and then they hear us talking about dying, and they go, "Oh, my God."
I don't want to talk to them.
So your daughter didn't know who Vanilla Ice was, huh? I keep up with you.
It's actually my stepson who's
Your stepson,
14.
okay.
He didn't know. We were talking about Vanilla Ice, I guess, was at Leesburg at the Bike Fest this weekend. And he said, "Who's that?" And I was like, "Oh."
Why, did you like Vanilla Ice?
Well, I mean, he had one song, Ice Ice Baby, I guess.
Yeah.
Which was really
Everybody
a Queen.
liked that.
Which was really a Queen thing, right? Wasn't that Queen?
Yeah.
Oh, I have no idea.
See, that makes me feel old.
That would have been a little bit before.
With different generations.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I like to pretend I'm not.
Yeah.
Hold on, the phone rang this time.
Okay.
It's stuck. Good morning, you're on the air.
Good morning. We had a situation where my mother-in-law had a living will, and she was up in Pennsylvania. Now, we're down here in Florida, and the living will was created in Florida. Mm-hmm. She had a copy of the living will, and the living will was with her and also to the nursing facility that she was in at the time. Mm-hmm. She had a heart attack or whatever, went down. Mm-hmm. They took her to the hospital and tried to revive her. Mm-hmm. They knew she had a living will. Was there something with the interstate stuff that's why they continued to do it? Because we had to come home and fax them another copy of it before they would actually pull the plug.
Yeah. It's a good possibility that because it was a different state that their laws are different, and so the living will wasn't honored because of that. I would think a stronger possibility is that nursing facility has their own policies and procedures for how they handle those types of situations. And I think that they're probably obligated to call 911. And the living will, if you call 911, the paramedics are going to do everything they have to keep the person alive and transport them to the hospital, and then the hospital would honor the living will. And I think that that's pretty common from state to state. But
Correct.
I'm not positive about that. Many state, and so the DNR form, the do not resuscitate form, that's what we have in Florida that people can have, and they would, if you have one of those done, that's for the paramedics. If they get called, they would not resuscitate.
Okay.
And in other states, it's called other things, like physician's order for life support treatment. It's a POLST form, or it's a medical order for life support treatment. So it varies from state to state. But the paramedics will look on the person's refrigerator typically to see if they have a DNR form or a POLST.
Right. So just give legal precedence that if they did perform this and then bill the insurance or bill you for the extra procedures, you say no, this weren't supposed to be done, so that they would do that.
We're up against the clock, Bob.
I really can't answer that question.
Yeah,
sorry.
And I'm sorry, we are absolutely out of time. Lisa, always good to see you. Thank you for coming in here again. And call us or go on our website. We have Hospice's website and phone number there.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pat O'Neill. A scene of devastation in Arkansas the morning after a series of deadly tornadoes in the town of Mayflower.
Some meteorologists are saying that this could have been an EF3 or higher, which means sustained winds of more than 135 miles an hour.
Fox's Casey Stigall. Danville Police Chief Rick Paget after seeing the damage.
It really hits home when you see people, searching for belongings and